This is now Tarot Lesson 170, and I have a couple of points to make. One, the first thing has to do with how we learn to read cards. So I need to tell you a little story. Sometimes I have to play around with the technical side of websites, and I change name servers and DNS entries and all, and something I came across a while ago, EPP/A. I don't know what any of it means, but so I have a question about something, and I get tech support, and I read the answer, and I understand what the answer is, but then when I go to the actual website and the cPanel, it's one thing, I hear it and I read it and I understand it, but when I have to do something about it or do something with the information, I'm not that familiar with it. So I have to not exactly guess, but I have to make the best decision I can based on my current understanding, based on what they told me from tech support and all the rest of it. So I think it's a bit like that with the tarot. So you read a card, you read a book, or you watch videos, whatever it happens to be, and you develop a bit of understanding about the tarot. And you understand it to some extent when you hear it, but then it becomes different when you have to apply the information that you got, because you can't remember all of it. And some of it wasn't relevant for the question that you've got. And it's a bit like, if I can draw here, it's a bit like this is that's your understanding of the tarot. And then you have to, you pick a card and you have to do something with it, referring back to what you understood before. But it's not usually exactly appropriate. So you've got to make the most sensible decision you can about the card that comes up based on what you've read or what you understand, as well as based on your whole life and your whole life experience. And then as you make sense of a card, then the knowledge that you have of the tarot becomes slightly bigger. And I think that's what's going on with the tarot, so that you don't need to, when you read something, you don't need to remember everything. You don't really need to remember anything, because it's all in your understanding. But when you've got a card, you maybe remind yourself or think back or connect with your pool of information, or your pool of knowledge that you've gathered over the course of however long you've been looking at cards. But then it's up to you in a reading to make the best sense that you can at that moment for the card that came up, rather than think you've got to know everything before you can even begin, because it's kind of like a journey, an ongoing journey of discovery. So that was point number one. Today I'd like to speak about strength, the strength card in particular, and the future, but I don't know about the future. So I'd begin with comments that people left about the last video, because I wanted to know what you thought about gravity. So I've got some things written down. Somebody said that the Hanged Man represents someone undergoing a transformation. There's the card. A transformation. And existing between two worlds, because we've got the normal way of looking at things, the everyday world, and you've got this particular person's perspective and view on the world, and they're two different things. But also, the person who left the comment made the point about it being a card of transformation. So, if we get, as I've done before, a piece of paper, and if we write down here, the Hanged Man, we write down transformation. Formati. Okay, you get that. That's transformation, right? And then instead of trying to make something of it, you just think, okay, transformation. What does this lead us to think about, or what might we think about? Because and the fact that it's a card of transformation. So when the Hanged Man comes up, And because you've got the idea of transformation, you can look at other cards in the spread. And let's say you get the Two of Cups. Because the Hanged Man came up earlier, it can get you thinking about a relationship as a process of transformation. You wouldn't normally look at the Two of Cups and think transformation. Maybe you do, but it's more like connection between people. But if the Hanged Man comes up earlier in the spread or along with this card, because of what the commenter left, maybe we begin to understand or look at the card or talk about how a relationship changes you. And you go into the relationship in the beginning and you're one kind of person. But really, if you're going to get the most out of the relationship, or if the relationship is going to get the most out of you, you've got to transform yourself somehow. So the Hanged Man being about transformation, if we also get the Two of Cups, then it emphasizes the transformational or transformative power of this person or that person, depending on who you are in the relationship, or the relationship itself. So I think what we're doing is, we go back to this, we've got our understanding here in this circle, but by having an idea connected with a card, we can then sort of make the idea part of the answer or the meaning of a card that we might never have thought of that before. So we're sort of developing understanding as we go. And the other thing is, the person said, the person, the Hanged Man, is existing between two worlds. We've got the normal way of looking at things, and we've got the 180-degree different way of looking at things. So if we've got two worlds, and I want to write down two worlds, right? And then we wonder about what can we do with the idea of two worlds? And the first thing I thought was, are you in the middle? We've got two worlds, right, in the Hanged Man. Is the questioner in the middle? Or are they closer to one end or the other? Are they closer to the normal way of looking at things, or are they closer to a kind of different way of looking at the world? And then if this Two of Cups comes up again beside it, you might wonder, are you looking for or expecting a typical, normal, everyday relationship? Or are you looking for a different kind of relationship where the person sees and understands and appreciates and enjoys the inner you, or the real you that you can't really present to the world? You know, because maybe it's about the tarot. Maybe you have an interest in the tarot. And so you meet somebody and you know that if you talk about the tarot, they're just going to think you're weird. And it can be that kind of thing. So the Hanged Man, the idea of two worlds, can make you look at about the nature of the relationship in a different kind of a way. And also two worlds, I thought of the Six of Coins. If you think of this card as two worlds and the Six of Coins, so it can get you looking at or explaining about how we've got people in need, and we've got somebody with the power or the resources to help out other people. And that can be what your challenge is because of the Hanged Man. So are you going to be somebody, even if you don't have a lot of money, are you going to be generous? Or are you going to ask for help? Or are you going to be too embarrassed to ask for help? And so we've got two worlds here. The world of the individual who is generous, and the world of the people who need, temporarily anyway, they need help. So it can get you, if you've got no money or hardly any money, and somebody asks you for a dollar, or somebody on the street wants money for food and so on, or money to buy something to drink, what do? Do you walk past them, or do you give, if you've got $4, you give them $2? That can be what is shown here. It doesn't have to be that you're wealthy, but are you willing to share or pass on what you've got, just because it might be, in your philosophy, the right thing to do? So what are the two worlds? If the person talked here about two worlds, what are they? And is it the inner and the outer? the inner you and the outer you. The conventional, this is how things ought to be, and your own personal variation on what's normal or what's typical. Or it could be this. I was remembering that people say that you can only, at any one time, you can only hold between 5 and 7 things in your mind at the same time. You know what? That you can't remember everything, or you can't hold everything in your mind at the same time. Which is why, when you're looking at the tarot, you can't expect to know or to have immediate access and to everything that you've gathered in your understanding of the tarot. So rather than expect to be able to remember everything, relax and see what finds you, what is already in your memory that comes to mind to do with the question or the question that's been asked. And I think I want to say, and rather than talk yourself out of it, just go with the idea that you've got and see where it leads. Because you're going to find, I think, that you're able to read cards more easily and cards better if you just trust yourself. But then I looked up that how many things can you hold in your mind at the same time, and apparently the number nowadays is 4. You can only hold 4 things in your working memory. So maybe the one version of the one world of the Hanged Man is the working memory, and the other version is the inner you, which is whole and complete and doesn't forget anything. So who are you going to connect with? The outer you that can only hold 4 things, or the inner you that can hold everything? Somebody else left a comment, if I can find it on this screen here. One is often blocked from what we set out to do. And so that because the Hanged Man is hanging upside down, it can represent delay. So that seems quite right. But then we might find ourselves wondering, okay, if the Hanged Man represents a block, what's the nature of the block? And you could, at this point, pick a card, and we get the Page of Cups as the nature of the block. And maybe what you're doing is the page is looking at one fish, and there's lots of fish in the ocean. So maybe the block is you're too focused, you're too narrow in what you're looking at or what you're looking for. So maybe what you do, the block is you're too narrow, so expand outward and look elsewhere, or look in places or go places you wouldn't normally go. And that way you get over the block. So it's not about just remembering. It's more seeing what ideas come back into your mind because they're already there, because you read about them or you thought about them one way or the other. And there were more comments than I'm going to talk about because I don't know how long this is taking, but anyway, somebody mentioned that the gravity of the situation is often where the truth is. So maybe with the Hanged Man, because it represents gravity, it's important to talk about being serious in your question or in looking for the answer or in discussing the answer. Because the gravity, the seriousness is where the truth is. So if you're lighthearted and casual about things, it's not going to work as well as if you take seriously whatever it is you're going to do. So, okay. So then, on a slightly different topic, in the last video I talked about aim. I talked about aim, and I mentioned about. I think it's a good if you pay attention to the ideas that come to you and follow through on them and see how they work, you're going to become more connected with the inner you that knows everything. So you have an aim, but I think what we want to do, or it's a good idea to do what will give us satisfaction at that time. And satisfaction and satisfactory, there's a Latin word satis, S-A-T-I-S, which means enough. And maybe that's what we do with aims and goals and traveling to our destination, we are aware of what's enough for the moment, or what's enough for right now, knowing that. So today, right now, we might, a little of whatever it is might be enough. Whereas tomorrow or next week, a lot is going to be enough. So if we aim for enough, then we can also know that it's going to change. The amount of what represents enough is going to change over time. So we don't need to have everything right now, and we also don't need to. We can be happy with enough for the time being, knowing that it's going to change. And the other thing is AIM, AIM, has 3 letters. So maybe when you're thinking about your goals or whatever it is you want to do, instead, because last time I mentioned about goal, GOAL adds up to 14. If you've got one goal, you're dealing with the temperance card, which is hard going or can be hard going. If you've got goals with plural with an S, you're dealing with the star card, so you get help and it's easier. So maybe when you're thinking about your goals, we've got 3 letters, 1, 2, 3. Maybe with goals, set 3 goals instead of just 1. Rather than just think that you have to have a final, complete, perfect goal that you're aiming for. If that's not working for you, have 3 goals instead of just 1. And the other thing is I wrote down destination. And because destination has 11 letters in it, maybe each project has 11 milestones or 11 steps, because if you think of it, sometimes you're 1 step away from the solution or 1 step away from the answer. At other times, you're 10 steps away. And so it can be useful to have an idea of how close you are, not so much where you are, but when you are. Are you close to the end, or are you still close to the beginning? And if you're still close to the beginning, you need milestones, you need stepping stones, or you need points where you measure your progress, or where you maybe course correct. If you realise you want to get to here, but you're over here, you need to get back on track with your own project or with your own self. And we can get an idea. And so think about aims and the ideas that you got, because when we have thoughts and ideas at random times, strange times, write it all down, because rather than talk yourself out of it. And so it can be that if you pay attention to the ideas that you get, if you're 1 step away from the solution, then it can be like a major leap, and you're there where you want to end up. But if you're at the beginning of the journey, or you're in the early stages of the trip or the journey, then I've lost a thought. Sometimes you lose your thought. So what do? I'm trying to go back to what I was talking about and see if I can remember it that way. So if you're many steps away from the destination, you know that you're many steps away. So a small step is what you need. And the ideas that you get can be clues or ideas or guidance to get you back on track, or to get you moving correctly in the direction which you really want to go. So if you're only 1 step away from the solution, it's 1 step. But if you're many steps away from the solution, you need intermediate goals or intermediate steps or intermediate stages. And you're going to, the ideas that you get can be giving you hints or clues on what these intermediate steps are. So we shouldn't expect then we get out of the habit of expecting a magic bullet or a magic wand that will suddenly make everything perfect, because most of the time it's not like that. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the strength card here, because we can look at the lion So we've got the woman who represents purity because she's dressed in white, and the lion is Leo, right? And Leo's fault is pride, or ego. And so it can be with the strength card, the woman is closing the lion's mouth. You or the questioner are able to or see the importance of controlling ego and selfishness in yourself and in the other people involved in the question. So the lion can represent ego, but then I thought a connected idea is the lion can represent drama. You know, in English they talk about a drama queen. Some people need chaos and they need things to be going wrong all the time, and they need upsets because it makes them feel alive. Because if things are going well, it's easy to get to begin to take things for granted or to think it's all going to happen anyway. I don't need to make any kind of effort. And so a lot of people need drama and chaos. So they come to you for a reading and they tell you about all these things that are going wrong. But maybe they don't actually want answers. I'm not saying it's true for everybody, but it's just this, with the strength card, something else to add to your pool of knowledge about the strength card is that the lion can represent ego. It could also represent drama and needing to be overly dramatic about something that's very straightforward or simple. Maybe with the strength card reversed, that's when the drama is overdone. And also, if you think about drama, if you go to a theatre, you're watching a drama on stage. So with the strength card upside down, there can be a certain amount of acting on the part of the people involved with the question. So people, if you're watching an actor on stage and they're yelling and screaming and they're angry, you know they're not pretending, but you know they're acting angry and screaming. And so you understand what they're doing in a particular kind of a way. And maybe you're drawn into the action of the play and overwhelmed by it or taken by it. But if you're dealing with somebody who's overly dramatic with the strength card reversed, remind yourself, this is drama. So how are you going to respond? Are you going to be as dramatic as they are, or are you going to calm them down? And this is what the woman is doing in the strength card. Where there's drama, where there's over-excitement, she says, okay, just settle down. And so maybe settle down is the answer to the question or it's part of the answer to the question. Maybe it describes the best approach to take to the problem. Instead of being all wrapped up in the problem and being overwhelmed by it, relax for a few minutes and take it easy and see what's actually going on and how maybe it's been blown out of proportion. Because if you try to solve the problem when there's cannon exploding and bombs going off and people yelling and screaming, you're not going to get very far. So maybe with the strength card, the first step with a dramatic situation is everybody calm down, everybody settle down. And then we've got a chance of figuring out what to do or figuring out the best thing to do. Let me just look at the thing. Okay, I've gone for 24 minutes, so I'm going to stop, and I wanted to talk about the future, but I'll do that next time, only because I don't want to go on for way too long. So that was it. Thank you very much for watching. If you have comments, leave them down below, and I'll talk to you in a bit. Okay? Bye-bye.